Korean is the official language of South Korea and North Korea, as well as one of the two official languages in China's Yanbian Korean Autonomous Prefecture. Approximately 80 million people speak Korean worldwide. For over a millennium, Korean was written with adapted Chinese characters called hanja, complemented by phonetic systems like hyangchal, gugyeol, and idyu. In the 15th century, a national writing system called hangul was commissioned by Sejong the Great, but it only came into widespread use in the 20th century, because of the yangban aristocracy's preference for hanja. Most historical linguists classify Korean as a language isolate, while a few consider it to be in the controversial Altaic language family. The Korean language is agglutinative in its morphology and SOV in its syntax. Names. The Korean names for the language are based on the names for Korea used in North and South Korea. In South Korea, the language is most often called hangul, consisting of hanja, the South Korean name for Korea, and mal, meaning speech. The at the end of the first word becomes by the rules of consonant assimilation in Korean phonology. More formally, it may also be called hangul or gugyeol. Literally national language. In North Korea and Yanbian Korean Autonomous Prefecture in China, the language is most often called Chosun Mal, or more formally, Chosun R. On the other hand, Korean people in the former USSR, who refer to themselves as Koryo Saram, call the language Goryeo. In mainland China, following the establishment of diplomatic relations with South Korea in 1992, the term Kawoksik has normally been used to refer to the standard language of North Korea and Yanbian, while Hanbukubdik is used to refer to the standard language of South Korea. Some older English sources also use the spelling Korean to refer to the language, country, and people. The word Korean is derived from Goryeo, which is thought to be the first dynasty known to Western countries. Classification. While the majority of linguists consider Korean to be a language isolate, there have been attempts to link it with other languages in the region. Korean is similar to the Altaic languages in lacking certain grammatical elements, including articles, fusional morphology and relative pronouns. Since Ramstadt's 1928 article, some linguists support the hypothesis that Korean can be classified as an Altaic language or as a relative of Proto-Altaic. However, linguists agree today that typological resemblances cannot be used to prove genetic relatedness of languages, as these features are typologically connected and easily borrowed. Such factors of typological divergence as Middle Mongolian's exhibition of gender agreement can be used to argue that a genetic relationship is unlikely. The hypothesis that Korean might be related to Japanese has had some supporters due to some apparent overlap in vocabulary and similar grammatical features that have been elaborated upon by such researchers as Samuel E. Martin and Roy Andrew Miller. Sergei Anatolievich Starostin found about 25% of potential cognates in the Japanese Euro-Korean 100-word Swadesh list. If valid, a would place these two languages closer together than other possible members of the Altaic family. In Korea, Korean ethnic nationalism and anti-Japanese sentiment has led to widespread dismissal of the idea of Japanese-Korean linguistic connection. A popular myth among Koreans that they are descended from horse-riding peoples of Central Asia such as the Mongols has led Korean scholars to continue propagating the Altaic hypothesis, with many Western scholars taking a more nuanced view. However, competing theories of the genetic provenance of Korean are less well evidenced. Some linguists, most notably Alexander Vovin, have argued that the indicated similarities between Japanese and Korean are not due to any genetic relationship, but rather to a Sprachband effect and heavy borrowing, especially from ancient Korean into Western Old Japanese. A good example might be Middle Korean zam and Japanese asa hemp. This word seems to be a cognate, but while it is well attested in Western Old Japanese and Northern Ryukyu, in Eastern Old Japanese it only occurs in compounds, and it is only present in 3 sub-dialects of the South Ryukyu and dialect group. Then, the doublet o hemp is attested in Western Old Japanese and Southern Ryukyu. It is thus plausible to assume a borrowed term. Among ancient languages, various closer relatives of Korean have been proposed, constituting a possible small Korenic language family. Some classify the language of Jeju Island as a distinct modern Koreanic language. History. Korean is descended from Proto-Korean, Old Korean, Middle Korean and Modern Korean. Since the Korean War, contemporary North-Euro-South differences have developed in Standard Korean, including variants in pronunciation, verb inflection, and vocabulary. Geographic distribution. Korean is spoken by the Korean people in North Korea and South Korea and by the Korean diaspora in many countries including the People's Republic of China, the United States, Japan, and Russia. Korean-speaking minorities exist in these states, but because of cultural assimilation into host countries, not all ethnic Koreans may speak it with native fluency. Official status. Korean is the official language of South Korea and North Korea. It is also one of the two official languages of the Yanbian Korean Autonomous Prefecture in China. In South Korea, the regulatory body for Korean is the Seoul-based National Institute of the Korean Language, which was created by presidential decree on January 23, 1991. In North Korea, the regulatory body is the Language Institute of the Academy of Social Sciences. Dialects. Korean has numerous small local dialects, literally speech, satri, or bang-on in Korean. The standard language of both South Korea and North Korea is based on the dialect of the area around Seoul, though the Northern Standard has been influenced by the dialect of Pyongyang. All dialects of Korean are similar to each other and at least partially mutually intelligible, though the dialect of Jeju Island is divergent enough to be sometimes classified as a separate language. One of the more salient differences between dialects is the use of tone. Speakers of Seoul dialect make use of vowel length, whereas speakers of the Gyeongsang dialect maintain the pitch accent of Middle Korean. Some dialects are conservative, maintaining Middle Korean sounds which have been lost from the standard language, whereas others are highly innovative. There is substantial evidence for a history of extensive dialect leveling, or even convergent evolution or intermixture of two or more originally distinct linguistic stocks, within the Korean language and its dialects. Many Korean dialects have basic vocabulary that is etymologically distinct from vocabulary of identical meaning in Standard Korean or other dialects, such as South Eola dialect versus Standard Korean I-mouth, or Gyeongsang dialect versus Standard Korean garlic chives. This suggests that the Korean peninsula may have at one time been much more linguistically diverse than it is at present. See also the Bueo languages hypothesis. There are few clear boundaries between Korean dialects, and they are typically partially grouped according to the regions of Korea. Sounds. Consonants. 1. The liquids and are represented in Korean writing by modifications to vowel symbols. The IPA symbol a, OA is used to denote the tensed consonants. Its official use in the extensions to the IPA is for strong articulation, but is used in the literature for focalized voice. The Korean consonants also have elements of stiff voice, but it is not yet known how typical this is of focalized consonants. They are produced with a partially constricted glottis and additional subglottal pressure in addition to tense vocal tract walls, laryngeal lowering, or other expansion of the larynx. Vowels. A is closer to a near-open central vowel, though a or euro is still used for tradition. Allophones, is aspirated, say degree and becomes an alveolo-palatal, degree before, j, or, I, for most speakers. This occurs with the tense fricative and all the affricates as well. At the end of a syllable, changes to mushroom. May become a bilabial, e, before, o, or, u, a palatal, a section before, j, or, I, a velar, x, before, e, a voiced, e between voiced sounds, and a, h, elsewhere. /p, t, t °C, k/ become voiced, b, d, angstrom, e, between voiced sounds. /m, n/ frequently denasalized to, b, d, at the beginnings of words. Becomes alveolar flap, e 3/4 between vowels, and, l, or, e, at the end of a syllable or next to another. Note that a written syllable final are to the first, when followed by a vowel or a glide, migrates to the next syllable and thus becomes e3/4. Traditionally, was disallowed at the beginning of a word. It disappeared before j, and otherwise became. However, the inflow of Western loan words changed the trend, and now word initial are pronounced as a free variation of either e3/4 or l. The traditional prohibition of word initial became a morphological rule called initial law in South Korea, which pertains to Sino-Korean vocabulary. Such words retain their word initial in North Korea. All obstruents at the end of a word are pronounced with no audible release, pish, tish, kish. Plosive stops /p, t, k/ become nasal stops, m, n, angstrom before nasal stops. Hangul spelling does not reflect these assimilatory pronunciation rules, but rather maintains the underlying, partly historical morphology. Given this, it is sometimes hard to tell which actual phonemes are present in a certain word. One difference between the pronunciation standards of North and South Korea is the treatment of initial, r, and initial, n. For example, labor North, Rodong, South, Nodong, history North, Ryakza, South, Yiksa, female North, Nyaja, South, Yaja, morphophonemics. Grammatical morphemes may change shape depending on the preceding sounds. Examples include iun/num and I/ga. Sometimes sounds may be inserted instead. Examples include yol/roll, euro/ro, ico/co, idunji/dunji and dial/ya. However, euro/ro is somewhat irregular, since it will behave differently after a real consonant. Some verbs may also change shape morphophonemically. Grammar. Korean is an agglutinative language. The Korean language is traditionally considered to have 9 parts of speech. For details, see Korean parts of speech. Modifiers generally precede the modified words, and in the case of verb modifiers, can be serially appended. The basic form of a Korean sentence is subjector objector verb, but the verb is the only required and immovable element. Did you go to the store? Yes. Speech levels and honorifics. The relationship between a speaker or writer and his or her subject and audience is paramount in Korean, and the grammar reflects this. The relationship between speaker-writer and subject-referent is reflected in honorifics, while that between speaker-writer and audience is reflected in speech level. Honorifics. When talking about someone superior in status, a speaker or writer usually uses special nouns or verb endings to indicate the subject's superiority. Generally, someone is superior in status if he/she is an older relative, a stranger of roughly equal or greater age, or an employer, teacher, customer, or the like. Someone is equal or inferior in status if he/she is a younger stranger, student, employee or the like. Nowadays, there are special endings which can be used on declarative, interrogative, and imperative sentences, and both honorific or normal sentences. They are made for easier and faster use of Korean. Honorifics in traditional Korea were strictly hierarchical. The caste and estate systems possessed patterns and usages much more complex and stratified than those used today. The intricate structure of the Korean honorific system flourished in traditional culture and society. Honorifics in contemporary Korea are now used for people who are psychologically distant. Honorifics are also used for people who are superior in status. For example, older relatives, people who are older, teachers, and employers. Speech levels. There are 7 verb paradigms or speech levels in Korean, and each level has its own unique set of verb endings which are used to indicate the level of formality of a situation. Unlike honorifics which are used to show respect towards the referent, speech levels are used to show respect towards a speaker's or writer's audience. The names of the 7 levels are derived from the non-honorific imperative form of the verb, i.e. currency in each level, plus the suffix I², which means style. The highest 6 levels are generally grouped together as Shindaenmol, while the lowest level is called Banmol in Korean. Nowadays, younger generation speakers no longer feel obligated to lower their usual regard toward the referent. it is common to see younger people talk to their older relatives with banmal. This is not out of disrespect, but instead it shows the intimacy and the closeness of the relationship between the two speakers. Transformations in social structures and attitudes in today's rapidly changing society have brought about change in the way people speak. Gender and Korean language. Traditionally, Korean women are often viewed as subservient to men, and this in turn is observed in their everyday speech patterns. Some examples of this can be seen in a woman unregistered trademark's use of softer tone in order to minimize conflict or aggression. A married woman introducing herself as Somaronia unregistered trademark's mother or wife, not with her own name. The presence of gender differences in titles and occupational terms. And females sometimes using more tag questions and rising tones in statements, much like the way that young children talk. In Western societies, individuals won't avoid expressions of power asymmetry, mutually addressing each other by their first names for the sake of solidarity. Between two people of asymmetrical status in a Korean society, people tend to emphasize differences in status for the sake of solidarity. Koreans prefer to use kinship terms rather than any other terms of reference. In traditional Korean society, women have long been in disadvantaged positions. Korean social structure traditionally consisted of a royal monarch, a patriarchally dominated family system that emphasizes the maintenance of family lines. This structure has tended to separate roles of women from those of men. Vocabulary. The core of the Korean vocabulary is made up of native Korean words. A significant proportion of the vocabulary, especially words that denote abstract ideas, are Sino-Korean words either directly borrowed from written Chinese, or coined in Korea or Japan using Chinese characters. The exact proportion of Sino-Korean vocabulary is a matter of debate. Son stated 50–60%. Later, the same author gives an even higher estimate of 65%. Jung Jae-do, one of the compilers of the dictionary Uramul asserts that the proportion is not so high. He points out that Korean dictionaries compiled during the colonial period include many unused Sino-Korean words. In his estimation, the proportion of native Korean vocabulary in the Korean language might be as high as 70%. Korean has two numeral systems, one native, and one borrowed from Sino-Korean. To a much lesser extent, some words have also been borrowed from Mongolian and other languages. Conversely, the Korean language itself has also contributed some loan words to other languages, most notably the Tsushima dialect of Japanese. The vast majority of loan words other than Sino-Korean come from modern times, approximately 90% of which are from English. Many words have also been borrowed from Western languages such as German via Japanese part-time job, IOAE5 e-degreeology, e-degree-ish currency plastic cast used for broken bones. Some Western words were borrowed indirectly via Japanese during the Japanese occupation of Korea, taking a Japanese sound pattern, for example dozen a florin euro a florin 1/4 to the first dasu-ish currency dasa. Most indirect Western borrowings are now written according to current hangulization rules for the respective Western language, as if borrowed directly. There are a few more complicated borrowings such as German, y, the first part of whose endonym, ed iota et angstrom florin lent degree the Japanese approximated using the kanji c3 euro doitsu that were then accepted into the Korean language by their Sino-Korean pronunciation, c doc plus e euro il equals dogil. In South Korean official use, a number of other Sino-Korean country names have been replaced with phonetically oriented hangulizations of the country's endonyms or English names. Because of such a prevalence of English in modern Korean culture and society, lexical borrowing is inevitable. English-derived Korean, or Kinglish, is increasingly used. The vocabulary of the Korean language is roughly 5% loan words. As in Japanese, Korean uses words adapted from English in ways that may seem strange to native English speakers. For example, in soccer heading is used as a noun meaning a header, while fighting is a term of encouragement like come on/go in English. Something that is servers is free or on the house. A building referred to as an apart is an apartment, and a type of pencil that is called sharp is a mechanical pencil. North Korean vocabulary shows a tendency to prefer native Korean over Sino-Korean or foreign borrowings, especially with recent political objectives aimed at eliminating foreign influences on the Korean language in the North. In the early years, the North Korean government tried to eliminate Sino-Korean words. Consequently, South Korea may have several Sino-Korean or foreign borrowings which are not in North Korean. Slang. The use of slang has become very popular in South Korea since the emergence of the Internet, and is particularly prevalent in social media. In 2012, research was conducted about the frequency of slang use among students, which found that 97% of K-12 students, including 100% of middle and high school students, used slang. One of the main reasons why slang is used so much is its extensive use in media, both social and more traditional. The influence of slang can be seen as both positive and negative. Many Koreans use a particular style of slang in which longer words are shortened to save time, which is especially common when using chat services. Examples of this slang include e-squared I instead of e-squared ish, currency ien, and e-copyright e-paragraph instead of e-copyright I-florin e-paragraph e. However, there are also negative aspects to the use of slang, the greatest concern being that teenagers will sometimes use slang in their academic writing. Writing system. Formerly, the languages of the Korean peninsula were written using hanja, called hyangchal or adyu, the use of Chinese characters either as rebuses to stand for Korean words, or as synonyms for those words. Writing was confined to the ruling elite, who most often wrote only in classical Chinese. Sejong the Great promulgated the Korean alphabet in 1446. Korean is now written almost exclusively in hangul. While South Korean schools still teach 1,800 hanja, North Korea abolished hanja decades ago. Below is a chart of the Korean alphabet symbols and their canonical IPA values. Modern Korean is written with spaces between words, a feature not found in Chinese or Japanese. Korean punctuation marks are almost identical to Western ones. Traditionally, Korean was written in columns, from top to bottom, right to left, but is now usually written in rows, from left to right, top to bottom. Differences between North Korean and South Korean. The Korean language used in the North and the South exhibits differences in pronunciation, spelling, grammar and vocabulary. Pronunciation. In North Korea, palatalization of is optional, and can be pronounced, z, between vowels. Words that are written the same way may be pronounced differently, such as the examples below. The pronunciations below are given in revised romanization, Makunia Euro Ri Shower and Hangul, the last of which represents what the Hangul would be if one were to write the word as pronounced. Similar pronunciation is used in the North whenever the hanja CSH is attached to a Sino-Korean word ending in a or a. Spelling. Some words are spelled differently by the North and the South, but the pronunciations are the same. Spelling and pronunciation. Some words have different spellings and pronunciations in the North and the South, some of which were given in the phonology section above. In general, when transcribing place names, North Korea tends to use the pronunciation in the original language more than South Korea, which often uses the pronunciation in English. For example, grammar. Some grammatical constructions are also different. Vocabulary. Some vocabulary is different between the North and the South. Punctuation. In the North, gimitz, a eurosh and a euro are the symbols used for quotes. In the South, quotation marks equivalent to the English ones, a euro A and a euro, are standard, although a euro and a euro A are also used. Study by non-native learners. For native English speakers, Korean is generally considered to be one of the most difficult languages to master despite the relative ease of learning hangul. For instance, the United States Defense Language Institute places Korean in Category 4, which also includes Arabic, Japanese, and Chinese. This means that 63 weeks of instruction are required to bring an English-speaking student to a limited working level of proficiency in which he or she has sufficient capability to meet routine social demands and limited job requirements, and can deal with concrete topics in past, present, and future tense. Similarly, The Foreign Service Institute places Korean in Category V, the highest level of difficulty. The study of the Korean language in the United States is dominated by Korean American heritage language students. They are estimated to form over 80% of all students of the language at non-military universities. However, Sejong institutes in the United States have noted a sharp rise in the number of people of other ethnic backgrounds studying Korean between 2009 and 2011. They attribute this to rising popularity of South Korean music and television shows. Korean is considerably easier for speakers of certain other languages, such as Japanese. In Japan, it is more widely studied by non-heritage learners. Korean language tests. There are two widely used tests of Korean as a foreign language, the Korean Language Proficiency Test and the Test of Proficiency in Korean. The Korean Language Proficiency Test, an examination aimed at assessing non-native speakers' competence in Korean, was instituted in 1997. 17,000 people applied for the 2005 sitting of the examination. The TOPIK was first administered in 1997 and was taken by 2,274 people. Since then the total number of people who have taken the TOPIK has surpassed 1 million, with more than 150,000 candidates taking the test in 2012. The TOPIK test has 3 different difficulty levels: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. The difficulty level of the test taken determines the level acquis of Euro. The beginner test is levels 1 and 2. Intermediate is levels 3 and 4. And advanced is levels 5 and 6. The TOPIK includes 4 sections: vocabulary, grammar, writing, listening, and reading. The vocabulary grammar section, listening section, and reading section each consist of 30 multiple-choice questions worth a total of 100 points. The writing section consists of 10 multiple-choice questions worth 4 points each, and 4 to 6 written responses worth 60 points. The overall total score out of 400 is determined by adding up the 4 scores from each individual 100-point section. However, the level achieved is not simply a matter of achieving a minimum total score. The test taker must achieve a minimum score in each section in addition to a minimum average total score. In order to achieve the lower of the 2 levels on each test, the test taker must get at least 40 points in each of the 4 sections, and must get an average total score of 50 on the 4 sections. In order to achieve the higher of the 2 levels on each test, the test taker must get at least 50 points in each of the 4 sections, and must get an average total score of 70 on the 4 sections. See also, hangul, Korean count word, Korean language and computers, Korean mixed script, Korean numerals, Korean particles, Korean phonology, Korean romanization, Makunya Euro Shower, revised romanization of Korean, SKATS, Yale romanization of Korean. Altaic languages, hanja, list of English words of Korean origin, list of Korea-related topics, Sino-Korean vocabulary, vowel harmony, references. Further reading, Chang, Suk-jin. Korean. Philadelphia, John Benjamin's Publishing Company. ISBN A1-55619-728-4A. Hulbert, Homer B.A. Comparative Grammar of the Korean Language and the Dravidian Dialects in India. Seoul. Lee, Ki-moon Lee and S. Robert Ramsey. A History of the Korean Language, Martin, Samuel E. Lexical Evidence Relating Japanese to Korean. Language 42/2, 185 Euro 251. Martin, Samuel E. Morphological Clues to the Relationship of Japanese and Korean. In Philip Baldy, Linguistic Change and Reconstruction Methodology. Trends in Linguistics, Studies and Monographs 45, 483 Euro 509. Miller, Roy Andrew, Japanese and the Other Altaic Languages. Chicago, University of Chicago Press. ISBN 0-226-52719-0. Miller, Roy Andrew, Languages and History, Japanese, Korean and Altaic. Oslo, Institute for Comparative Research in Human Culture. ISBN 974-8299-69-4. Ramstedt, G.J. Remarks on the Korean Language. Ma Copyright Moise de la Socia Copyright Tar Copyright Finno-Ugrian 58. Rybutsky, Voka, Middle Mongol. In, Juharjan Hunan, The Mongolic Languages. London, Routledge. ISBN 0-7007-1133-3, 47 €82. Starostin, Sergei. Anna V. Daibo. Oleg A. Mudrak, Etymological Dictionary of the Altaic Languages, 3 volumes. Leiden, Brill Academic Publishers. ISBN 90-04-13153-1. Son, H. M. The Korean Language. Cambridge, Cambridge University Press. Son, Ho Min. Korean Language in Culture and Society. Boston, Twain Publishers. ISBN A978-0-8248-2694-9. Song, J. J. The Korean Language, Structure, Use and Context. London, Routledge. Trask, R. L. Historical Linguistics. Hodder Arnold. Vovin, Alexander, Koreo-Japonica. University of Hawaii Press. Whitman, John B. The Phonological Basis for the Comparison of Japanese and Korean. Unpublished Harvard University Ph.D. dissertation. External links, Korean Swadesh Vocabulary List, Linguistic and Philosophical Origins of the Korean Alphabet, Free Korean Language and Culture Course Online, in English, Korean Course, Free Korean Language Course Online, in English, USA Foreign Service Institute Korean Basic Course, Linguistic Map of Korea, Korean a Category 4 languages which are exceptionally difficult for native English speakers, Dongsa.net, a Korean verb conjugation tool that explains the conjugations for learners of Korean, EE#AI 5 1/4 IIOA micron IIE squared I, free online Korean English translation, in Korean, Korean. Phrasebook travel guide from Wiki Voyage.